Hello and welcome to the Loan Officer Wealth Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Johnstone, and I have an incredible offer for you today. What we've done is we've taken the 10 most profitable methods to grow your mortgage business that we have learned from interviewing the producers on this podcast, many of whom are doing over $100 million in volume per year. And we've packaged them together into a condensed 45-minute training where you get to learn the 10 most successful and profitable activities that you should be running in your mortgage business. Then we show you how to automate those processes with people and systems so that they run and continue to produce loan applications and new partners that want to send you business pre-booked into your calendar without you having to do any cold calls or chasing or really any work. It's a blueprint for you to be able to produce more in your business while actually working less. And you can go get that training today for free at chriswebinar.com. That's chriswebinar.com. So make sure you head over there today, grab that training for free, and make sure that you watch it, because the sooner you get started on implementing these strategies, the sooner you can see results and continue to grow your mortgage business. Thank you again for being here with us for this episode, and enjoy another one on the Loan Officer Wealth Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Loan Officer Wealth Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Johnstone, and we've got a phenomenal episode for you today, which is going to take you into what I believe may be the future of mortgage lending. And we have an incredible guest with us today, Pavan Agarwal. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So, for our listeners, before we dig into technology and a lot of some of the really cool stuff that we've got going on, could you just give us a little bit about your background? How did you join the mortgage industry, and kind of share your story with us?
No, sure. I grew up in the industry, um, and I grew up in real estate. My parents were in real estate. My mom was, I think she was at that time the number one listing agent in the Lakewood Bellflower area.
Oh,
This is
no
in the
way!
yeah, this is in the
Cool.
70s. This is in the 70s. Yeah. So as a kid, I remember 8 years old. I used to go farming with her every weekend, and I was the mule. So, she'd hand out these whatever cup holders or whatever, right, in her farm area.
Yeah.
And I was the mule that would carry the bag full of stuff. That was every Saturday was that, and every Sunday was sitting with them at the open houses, right? And helping put up the open house signs, helping take them down, all that stuff. So it's like, I never got licensed as a realtor. I'm a licensed loan officer, but I never got licensed as a realtor. But I understand real estate inside out. I help my mostly like every time we bought real estate, I was there. I watched my father how he evaluated it, how he did the rental income return calculations and all that. And I learned how to invest in real estate from him,
Wow.
and what to look for, how to look at. He could go, he was so good. He'd look at a house and he would figure out, like just on quick inspection, whether there's a structural problem, whether there's a grading problem, whether there's going to be any water issues, and, all this stuff. I mean, he was just a master at it,
Huh.
and he knew what to buy and what not to buy very quickly.
That is amazing. And as
Yeah.
a kid growing up, it's
Hmm.
I mean, what an incredible skill set to have, but also, life experience to be able to
Yeah.
learn how to invest. And,
Yeah.
so much of that is missing in the education system right now.
Yeah. I say is you don't ever really understand real estate unless you've collected rent and posted eviction notices and gone to court and done evictions, right? That's when you really understand real estate.
Yeah, yeah, that is so true.
Yeah,
And hopefully I'll teach my kids the investing side,
yeah.
but as little as possible of the other side of it. Absolutely.
Uh,
Awesome.
and then through the 90s. So my father started the company in 1980, and I worked with him along that journey. Through the 90s, I was a loan officer, and my area was the 110 corridor. I don't know, where are you located, Chris? Are you familiar with Southern California?
I am familiar with Southern
Yeah,
California. So my
yeah.
wife and I we travel there a fair bit, but I'm
Hmm.
actually just north of Toronto.
I see.
But every winter, right before the big freeze comes, we tend to leave. So we'll spend 3 to 4 months remote, somewhere warm, and
Yeah.
San Diego County has been our winter home for 3 months, or
Well, you
sorry,
should
3 years in a row.
well, you should make Puerto Rico your winter home. It's closer flight to Toronto. That's where I live now.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, very
yeah,
cool. So,
yeah.
a very good friend of mine, Tammy, lives in Puerto Rico. So we've always wanted to go. So I'm gonna put it on the list.
Yeah, it's Puerto Rico is an amazing place. You get it's like Hawaii, except it's Spanish culture, and all the Spanish, wonderful Spanish food and everything. And some of the best surfing in the world is in Puerto Rico. Some of the best scuba diving in the world is in Puerto Rico.
Wow, you sold me on it.
Yeah, yeah.
As soon as I heard surfing, I'm in.
And you're welcome to come on down and stay with us. We have this. We live in a place called Dorado Beach East,
Okay.
which is part of the Ritz-Carlton on the west end of San Juan.
Wow, that's
And
awesome. Thank you.
yeah, and it's it's on the it's right on the golf course next to the beach. Got lots of room, lots of bedrooms.
Man.
Do you have any
My-
kids, Chris?
I do, I
Yeah,
do. Yeah,
they're
they're
little,
yeah. So 7 and 8.
7, 8. Okay, well my little guy is 8 years old. They're gonna have a great time. Bring them
Oh
over.
man,
I just
that's
I just I just got a 2-story water slide installed in my pool. When I grew up, remember, I don't know if you remember this movie. Not when I grew up. I'm still a big kid. There was this movie called Blank Check. Do you remember that movie?
I do remember that movie.
And he built a slide from the second floor down. And ever since I
Yeah.
saw that movie, I was like, I want one of those. So so I built one.
That is so cool. I'm assuming that's not easy to find.
No, it had to be custom built.
Wow,
Yeah,
that is
yeah.
amazing.
So bring your kids over. You stay with us, and they'll have a great time. It's like my house, like a resort inside a resort. Yeah.
That is so cool. All right, well, we're definitely gonna have to come visit. That is
Okay.
amazing.
Yeah.
So for our listeners on the Sun West journey, so you were a loan officer. Now, I believe the title is CEO of SunWest Mortgage Corporate Company. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct, sir.
And you've come out with some really incredible technology in the last year. So, first off, can you explain what empathetic technology is?
Well, empathetic technology, I think the best explanation, like I think you saw it firsthand. I was freaking out a little while ago when we were having some technical challenges. And a human being responded to that. They did a wonderful job. And they measured my stress level, right? That's what human beings do, and they jumped on it and they straightened out the technical challenges, right?
Excellent.
And why was I stressed? Because I had a client, a customer, more forget a client, a customer. I had a commitment, right?
Okay.
I committed this time to you, and I wasn't ready, right? And that's how a every loan officer, every realtor feels when they're in front of a customer and the customer asks them a question and they don't have an answer.
Hmm.
They don't have the exact answer or the perfect answer or complete answer at that moment, right? I just had that same feeling at the beginning of this call, right? Okay, so what if I could solve that problem for all loan officers and realtors out there,
Hmm.
right? So what if what I just experienced, right? A loan officer would never have to experience that ever again, or a realtor would never have to experience that ever again. That that basically you're there facing a customer, you made a commitment, right? I mean, I had a commitment to you, I blocked off this time for you. I'm imposing on your time. And yet I wasn't prepared. Right? So now I'm stressed out because I'm wasting your time. Right. So when the loan officer is with the customer and the customer is given that loan officer his time and and the customer expects answers and completeness for that time. For that investment, his return is an expectation of completeness and accuracy. And the first time he asks a question that the loan officer doesn't have a complete answer to, right? And it's not possible, right? We're human beings. It's not possible for any human beings to have 100% of the answers for every possible scenarios. That's where technology comes in. So the technology senses the the its customers, its users, stress levels, right? And its users' mood and responds accordingly. So not only does it have all the answers, right? Because it is technology, so it can have all the answers, but it's also cognizant of how you feel and how you're feeling at that moment, and it's customizing its response accordingly.
That's
And that's
incredible.
yeah, and that's empathetic technology.
So in a real world application of that, is it like are you putting this to use during the mortgage application process?
Correct. So the current version of Morgan, which is, it's been in production for 3 years
Okay.
plus now, but it's still a pre-release version. Our target is to have the version 1.0 released. Currently I'm getting told by the dev and QC teams that Monday should be the date,
Oh,
right?
no
But
way.
yes, for the full 1.0 version, but the pre-release version is very good as it is right now. It's the only flaw, well, the major flaw in the pre-release version right now is the speed. I mean, we all expect technology to be instantaneous, but when you're asking complex questions like, does this borrower qualify with this scenario? You you know, it's fast when you compare to in a normal mortgage environment. You ask that question to underwriting to your underwriting team, maybe you'll get an answer in a couple hours, right? Morgan gives the answer in minutes, right? And the next version for many answers, not all answers, but for many answers, for many scenarios, you'll get answers almost near instantaneous.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so, is it technology where you, like, you're inputting forms and documents and all of like your standard application inputs, and then it's figuring out where that borrower fits?
Yeah, that's one of the many things it can do.
Okay.
Um, what it's really designed for is you talk to it in a very natural way, like you would talk. It's kind of like, you know, in the 80s, right? When I was in the business back then and seeing how loan officers did it. We had one underwriter. I still remember her. Her name was D. We had one DE underwriter. Her name was D. Okay. And the loan officer would take a loan application, right? It was all paper, right? And after he take loan officer, he come and sit next to D, right? And you go through it with her, right? And she'd tell him what to do and how to do it and what other documents to get. And that was it. It was one shot, right? One and done,
Right.
right? And it was the best service ever.
Hmm.
So the whole point of Morgan is not really we're not really going forward. We're going back as retro. We're going back to the 80s, back to the way mortgages should be originated, where it was just the loan officers, the banker, and the underwriter and everything, right?
Hmm.
It's just that everything got so complex in between, and people are trying to scale up to do large amounts of volume with limited number of underwriters, and
Yep.
so you have the current mess that you have today. So what if you as a loan originator had had D right next to you all the time, your own personal D,
Hmm.
okay? So that when you took the loan application and you sat with the borrower and you had those documents, you just gave it to D and D said, yeah, this works, or don't forget to ask for, this, this, this. I see a large deposit here, get an explanation on that. Like
Hmm.
what if it happened like that? Right? As opposed to taking a loan application, going through processing reviews, that takes a couple of days. They stack up the document, then it goes to underwriting. You wait another couple more days, and then underwriting gives you new conditions, and you have to go back to the borrower, right? So that's the current process. But but today with Morgan, so instead of D, now we have Morgan. You have Morgan right next to you all the time. So you sit down with the borrower, you take the application, you drop the documents, the information into Morgan, and Morgan will tell you, really fast. Typically, right now our commitment is 2 hours, and October 1st, that's going to go down to 1 hour. So any document that you drop into Morgan in 1 hour is going to tell you a full analysis of the document. What, like if you drop in income documents, it's going to tell you what the usable income is,
Hmm.
what the ratios will be. It'll run DU, everything for you within that 1 hour, right? And the goal is by the end of the year, it'll be down to 2 minutes. So Morgan will be faster than D was by the end of the year.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So, is this, I mean, ultimately replacing all of the steps in the underwriting process and making that instantaneous?
Yes.
Wow.
It's the simple answer is yes. And we're not quite there yet. We haven't replaced all the steps yet. We have from the loan officer's experience, it looks that way from the loan officers. The technology masks it.
Okay.
The technology knows when to bring in a human and when not to,
Okay.
right? Just like when you order an Uber, you don't really think about the fact that Uber is driven by a human. The car
Right.
is driven by a human. You see it as technology because you hit a button, the car comes, and you go where
Hmm.
you want to go, right?
Yep.
There's a human assist, right?
Wow. Okay.
Same thing with this technology. You as the end user don't know, don't care at, to what degree, when, how a human is involved, right? But a human is involved as needed, right? But that's masked from you, and our goal is that it be less and less human involvement as the AI gets smarter and smarter. So part of the way it works is the more you use it, the smarter it gets.
Okay.
So
Yep.
we have a big push right now to get more and more people to use it and more people to stump it. Ask it a question that will take a long time.
Hmm.
By a long time, instead of it, maybe it'll take instead of 2 minutes, it's taken 20 minutes, right,
Right.
to answer, right? But every time there's a question that takes a long time to answer, it's just learned something.
Hmm. That's incredible. So,
Right.
so building a platform on artificial intelligence, how how does that look from your perspective as somebody who's doing project management and you're looking to essentially shorten the underwriting time down to minutes? Like, do you have a development team that you're interfacing with and they're constantly doing inputs and outputs to the AI, or do you set the AI up and then just consistently feed it information and it kind of figures it out?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we've been developing this for years. I mean, uh, dozens of years, not months, but dozens of years. So it's been a long strategic process of collecting data, collecting scenarios. And so we have a massive database of every scenario, every exception, every customer complaint, every customer satisfaction, every positive review, every negative review, and what happened. We have a team that does a full analysis of what went right, what went wrong,
Yeah.
right? And that's all fed into this massive database, and that's the database that's used as the training engine for Morgan. Okay, so so as time goes on, as people use it, put more documents in, right? The database keeps updating and evolving, and
Hmm.
we have hundreds of engineers that work on this, from engineers that are dedicated to user interface development to back end communications. There's a complex communication network behind Morgan so that it's scalable to infinite number of users, to 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 data engineers, to rules engineers, and so forth. So there's a huge network of people that are devoted to this to make it all come together.
That is incredible. I was fortunate enough to meet with a Google engineer one
Hmm.
time who was working on AI, and the way that she
Hmm.
explained it to me was that at the very beginning, Google started working with AI, and it was just like we need to figure out the difference between a cat and a dog, and so we're going to feed this thing 10,000 images of cats and tell it this equals cat, and then we're going to feed it 10,000 images of dogs and say this equals dogs, and then we're going to put in one image and see if it can determine between a cat and a dog.
Hmm. Yes.
Much like you feed a mortgage application into it, you never really know what the nuance is going to be down the line until you get the output back out. But then, as soon as it figures out cat versus dog, then you can say, okay, well, let's take a look at cat is now a, I don't know, breed of cat, but like,
Hmm.
so I know breeds of dogs. So let's say, let's give it a Rottweiler. And
Hmm.
it can then, here's 10,000 Rottweiler pictures, and then it can identify, okay, this is a dog, but this is also a Rottweiler.
Hmm.
And it's just gone through the iteration process of learning so many times that now it can tell all of the different types of dogs of all the different types of breeds that are all over the world and all that information. So
Hmm.
basically, you're taking that process, applying it to the mortgage documentation process, and eventually you'll be able to feed in any type of application that comes in the front end and have all of the outputs go where they need to go on the other end.
Exactly. And we've been so let me I'm glad you brought up that cat versus dog scenario because that's an old paradox. That problem has been, they've been working on that problem since the 80s, maybe the 70s.
Really?
Yeah, so that's not a new problem.
Huh.
Okay. So the neural net um, technology, the neural net algorithms have existed, long before the 80s. I'm not sure exactly what year it was first theorized, designed.
Huh.
So this is not a new problem that she's talking about. It's an old problem that it has, but that problem was finally solved recently. Okay. And and so what was the big breakthrough? Was it a new algorithm? Was it new math? Was it some new science? And the answer is no. It's the same algorithm, right? It's the same math that was developed, 40 years ago, right? Is still used today. But the big breakthrough was computing power. We
Yeah.
finally have the computing power and the data warehouse capabilities to store all the data and to run and have the computing power to run a neural net that is, n dimensions deep.
Right.
Okay, so the idea, what they tried to do before in the 80s and 90s was try to do this with a neural net that was 4 or 5 dimensions deep, which just because that's all the computing power could support back then, right? And it wouldn't work. It was flaky, right? It wasn't deep enough. So what they realized was if you make it deep enough, then it works.
Hmm.
Now, here's the interesting thing: is because a neural net is is really a first order approximation of a human neuron, right? That is
I did not know that.
a simple, it's just a very simple first order approximation. It's a linear approximation, right?
Hmm.
A human neuron can be modeled as a, yeah, whatever, 50 order differential equation or something. And a single node of a neural net is the first order approximation of that. So if you put enough first order approximations, if you put enough linear layers, right, and you make it deep enough, then it starts getting really close, starts looking very close to a real neuron.
Huh.
Okay, just like the picture we're looking at the screen here, right? It looks like a nice smooth picture. You look great, by the way, right?
Thank you. Likewise.
Right. But if you look very closely, it's nothing more than lots of millions of little pixels,
Right.
right, smashed together. So we're able to have this video conference call. I mean, this technology, this theory of image processing that we're doing here, I mean, this existed in the 60s. I mean, Voyager sends images down, right? Voyager was launched when, right? In the late 60s or something like that, early 70s,
I think
right?
so. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's sending images from outside of the solar system down to Earth
Hmm.
using the same technology, same basis that we're talking to each other right now,
Huh.
right? right? So computer science really hasn't changed a whole lot,
That's incredible.
right? It's just processing power has changed.
So, and I this is I we risk losing the core of our audience here, but I do want to dive into the technology aspect of this and stick with us, folks. So when we take this and we apply it to Moore's law, and the
Hmm.
fact that computing power is just going to continually expand at a greater ratio as time goes on. And I didn't do that justice, but I'm you're picking up what I'm putting down.
Hmm.
Do you think that because that's moving so fast and so quick, now that we've kind of hit quantum computing and we've hit this level of storage and the infrastructure of the internet being able to facilitate larger and larger transactions, do you think that the mortgage process in the next 5 years, it's going to make what you're doing a whole lot easier because the AI is able to move that much faster?
Um, yeah, it's interesting about Moore's law because that's a whole nother topic because I think IBM just announced, I think 1 nanometer or 2 nanometer chips. And so we're down to atomic size gates. So you can't get any smaller.
Wow.
And so that means you can't get any faster, right? So Moore's law, on one hand, is coming to an end. And that's why you have disruptive technology like quantum computing and analog processing, right? So
Right.
the AI chips of the future are not digital, they're analog. And there's a company that's come up with a very innovative way to create neural nets through analog microchips. It's
Hmm.
fascinating. Okay, so when you do analog chips, then you don't have the computing power limitations that you do with digital chips. Okay, so you can create 50, 100, 200 layers deep neural net, and you'll have instantaneous processing. So
That's
it's,
crazy.
yeah, it is crazy. So when as and those and that company's got chips in the market now,
Wow.
and yes, so it's scary stuff. Like that AI will start to you won't be able to tell the difference between that and a human.
Yeah.
Right? So
That's yeah, that's wild. So figuring
yeah,
out a
yeah.
mortgage application, we'll probably get there.
Yes, yes. And oh, I can tell you that Morgan, like 90, oh, I'm in my own numbers, 99.7% it figured out.
Wow.
Right.
That is amazing.
Right. It was
99.7% of the mortgage
right.
application process
Yes.
it
Right.
can
Yeah. Yeah.
figure
It
out.
figured out. Yeah. Because we published those numbers for June and July. Right.
Jeez. That is
Right. Right.
incredible.
The 0.3% that it didn't figure out were the ones that it escalated to a human underwriter to a full manual review.
Right.
Right.
And
So that's why we're able to we have certain turn time guarantees that we have to meet
mhm.
that we publish. Right. Like one of the things I told you about was 1 hour. Any document that you give to Morgan will be reviewed in 1 hour.
Yep.
Another turn time guarantee is that any full loan you give to Morgan will be fully underwritten by no later than 8 a.m. the next morning.
Wow.
Okay. Okay. So that means like if you meet with the customer in the evening, right? So here's something that you couldn't do in the 80s. Like if I was a loan officer in the 80s and most borrowers like even the 90s when I met with the customers in the 90s, right? My area was that whole 110 corridor, that's Wash, Linwood. And most of my loan apps would be taken from like 6 in the evening to 10 at night,
Yep.
right? Um, so, and you'd sit across the kitchen table, you take a loan application, collect all the information, right? But I wished at that time I had D next to me, right? At 6 in the evening, 7 in the evening, 8 in the evening, right? And to
Yep.
get the approval on the spot. Okay, but with Morgan now at your fingertips, you sit across the kitchen table at 7 in the evening with your customer, right? You get the information, you get the documents, you drop into Morgan, and you're guaranteed that before you wake up, or before breakfast at least, depending on what time you wake up, I guess. Depends on how many drinks you had that night. So before 8 a.m., you're going to get your full loan approval, full
That is
conditional approval, right?
incredible.
Right. And so that's the current turn time that we're guaranteeing, and we're going to have that down to 2 hours with the next few months.
Amazing. Now,
Yeah,
in a lot of the documentation that I read, it mentions that it is NFT and blockchain based.
correct.
So, for our listeners, can you like how are you utilizing NFTs throughout this process and building on the blockchain? I mean, many people that'll be a brand new concept to them. Can you start to unpack just a little bit about how you're leveraging the blockchain and NFTs in order to make this happen?
That's an excellent question. So, first of all, if you go on our YouTube channel, there's a playlist called Game On,
Okay.
and in there, there's a 30-minute video where we actually walk through a real life scenario of originating a loan on the blockchain and using NFTs to in the loan purchase in the property purchase process. So, um, so, 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 so to get an in-depth view, you could watch that video, and it goes to step by step how that works. Um, so, in a high level, what the NFT blockchain process does is because our approvals are so fast and they're automated, and that means they're guaranteed. Okay, so when Morgan reviews a document and says this is the income, or this document satisfies this condition or whatever, right? We stand behind it. So we rep and warrant that. So we rep and warrant everything Morgan tells you.
Hmm.
So if I because Morgan is like I think it's only made, and I don't think even that was a mistake. I think it's only made one mistake this year, and that wasn't even a mistake. I believe it fell in the gray area. Um, so and there's thousands of loans that we put through it. I think since since the past 3.5 years that we've had Morgan, we've only had to scratch and dent about 3 loans because of mistakes by Morgan.
Wow.
And we hardly scratch and dent any loans. We have very few issues with repurchase and things like that. Um, and we when we traced it back, there was only 3 loans, and I don't know, and tens of thousands of loans.
That is incredible.
So yeah, so that's why we're able to issue the warranty. That's why we're able to issue the warranty on Morgan, that if it gives you an answer, it's final and we stand behind it because it's got the track record.
Hmm.
So because of that, so when Morgan gives you that conditional approval by 8 a.m., right, it can generate an NFT also at the same time.
Hmm.
Okay, now that approval, that NFT is meaningful because there's real money behind it. This is not like a Bored Ape where it's just like funny money, right? So because
Yep.
somebody's willing to pay for it, it has, you know,
Intrinsic value.
yeah. So, but this NFT has real value, right? Because it's you can a buyer can turn around and buy a house with it because there's real money. There's a real company, big company with pockets guaranteeing it, right? And the seller can see, because it's on the blockchain, the seller can see transparently whether he's committed that NFT anywhere else. Right. So
Hmm.
a lot of the risk in a home purchase transaction, right? That what realtors spend a lot of time managing expectations on, saying, oh yeah, okay, this buyer's okay. He's not going to mess with you. And same thing, the buyer's like worried that is the seller okay? Is he accepting multiple offers? So so all of those kind of risks and trust issues, right? Well, the blockchain solves the trust problem between two properties. All of those trust problems are solved by putting the NFT on the blockchain, and then the the uh, the seller and the buyer not having to second guess each other. Okay, so you
Hmm.
could, so we issue the NFT, you can buy the house with the NFT. The seller knows if the buyer has double committed, because it's basically the buyer won't be able to double commit, right? And the buyer knows if the seller has double committed,
Hmm.
right? And so that whole trust process is removed, the whole trust questions are removed, and your transactions become simpler. And then if you're a buyer, or sorry, if you're a seller and you have a choice between a say a cash offer um, from a customer that you don't know, from a buyer that you don't know, and you have to say the realtor saying, "Trust me, he really does have the money," right? Because he can show you bank statements with money in it, and it could be borrowed money, it could be gone tomorrow. You don't, as a seller, you don't have the time to do the diligence to see is this really his bank account, all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
You're, and as one of the things that Jason Oppenheim taught me was 50% of cash buyers aren't cash buyers, right? Right? They end up getting a loan anyways, right?
Huh.
So, um, so and that's frustrating for sellers, right? So that means two cash offers you get, one of the two is not even a real cash offer. And he took it because he thought it was cash offers would go simple,
Right.
right? So, but with NFT, that's backed by SunWest or any other bank that's on our network, and we're adding uh, our goal is to add 400 banks to this network uh, within the next 12 months. And
Wow.
so, right, so the NFT would be backed by any one of the banks, right? So our job would be issue the NFT, and any bank can you can cash it in with any of the banks on our network.
Huh.
Okay, so the seller's got a massive assurance, like this is real money. This is going to close, right? It's not going to change. It's committed.
So even though it's a traditional financing deal, it's as good as a cash offer because it's underwritten almost in real time by the
Yes,
bank almost as soon as the mortgage application is submitted.
exactly. Right. It's near real time underwriting. We call it, we trademarked it, called it instant underwriting.
Hmm.
And uh, from the seller's perspective, from the realtor's perspective, and from the loan officer perspective, it relative to what happens today, it is real time underwriting, right? It
Yeah.
feels instantaneous, right? And it's on the blockchain, so it's secure. So you can't monkey with something when it's on the blockchain. There's no
Yep.
fraud. And once the seller accepts the token, it's his, right? Along with the token, he accepts the earnest money deposit because that's maintained in the token as well, right? Okay. So, and that's a whole other, and if you watch the Game On channel, and we walk through the whole thing of how the token itself manages the earnest money deposit,
Hmm.
and it takes away some anxiety of the buyer as well, right? Now, I just bought a condo for my daughter, right? And I had to put $100,000 earnest money deposit.
Okay.
And I'm sitting here scratching my head, like, okay, I wrote a check for $100,000 payable to this realtor. I'm like, I don't know the net worth of this realtor. Yeah, it's like this $100,000 earnest money deposit could be more than what this guy's worth,
Right.
right? But
Yep.
you just take the leap of faith and you do it, right?
Yep.
And thankfully, but this is all anxiety, it's all stress that parties go through, right?
Yeah.
And I'm experienced, I'm in the industry, I've done a lot of real estate, right? And I
Yep.
felt anxious about writing that check.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine a first-time home buyer, even on a say an FHA transaction who spent 3 years saving up $10,000, right, to buy a house, right, and is writing a $5,000 earnest money deposit check to to a real estate agent.
Yeah.
Right? That's 50% of his life savings,
Yeah.
right? Imagine the anxiety he's feeling. I'm feeling anxious over $100,000. It's a lot of money, but for me, it's not. It's not half my life savings. I can tell you that for sure, right? Right. And so I'm feeling anxious over $100,000. And can you imagine somebody who's feeling anxious over half? his life savings,
Yeah.
right? Now, what if that anxiety could, if you eliminate anxiety from the real estate process, how much easier like it just the whole thing becomes,
Yes.
right? Right?
Yep.
And and the way you eliminate anxiety is two front. Trust. Blockchain solves most of the trust problems. And second is communication, transparency.
Yeah.
And again, blockchain and AI solves that because Morgan is available to everybody. You can go in and check the status and see what's going on. You can just talk to it. It's so easy to use, right? If you know how to text message, you can use Morgan.
Wow. That's incredible. So, Pavan, thank you for being so generous with your time.
Yeah.
I do have one last question, if I may
Hmm.
sneak it in.
Yeah, sure.
So we're seeing tokenization, NFTs, and putting blockchain one side of the transaction. The buyer coming in and making sure that we can go to the seller and say, hey, this is backed by this NFT, by SunWest. You're good to go to accept this offer. What about the other side of the transaction? Are you seeing any other vendors out there, or are you looking at the tokenization of the actual asset? So in the future, real estate can be done by tokenizing the actual asset and using that to transact?
You mean tokenizing the security instrument?
Yeah, like the
Or,
house.
um, you see, yeah, that's a good question. And I'm not, I see I see a market for that, but I don't see a very big market for it. And
Hmm.
let me tell you why. Because that problem's already been solved, right? Your house is already tokenized. I mean, the ancient Egyptians did it, 4,000 years ago on papyrus leaves, right? I mean, that's where our whole idea of security instruments today come from and deeds come from, right?
Indeed. Yeah.
And the pharaohs kept these things on papyrus leaves and kept track of who owned what
Huh.
quadrant, right? Off the Nile after each flood, you went to the pharaoh's um, library and you got to see who owned what,
Hmm.
right? They invented the process, and today's plot maps and security instrument and deeds, right? It's the same thing, right?
Wow.
It's kept on paper. So now it's kept on paper and then it's digitized and now it's stored on central database servers of different county recorders, right? So by putting on the blockchain, all that you really solve is the problem like that happened in New Orleans a couple of years ago. I don't know if you remember that, where their servers crashed and there was no backups.
No,
Yeah, yeah,
I did
yeah,
not hear about that.
yeah. That was a few years ago. There was no backups of their recordings. So they had it on one server and then the hard drive crashed, right?
That's a
And
bad day.
yeah, right. So the
Wow.
blockchain would solve that problem. Okay, but it's one county, one jurisdiction in the country at one time, and
Yeah.
I just don't see it being a big enough problem
Yep.
to to solve through the blockchain. And as far as keeping track of mortgages and who owns the mortgage and so forth, right? There's already something out there called MERS, Mortgage Electronic Recording System,
Yep.
right? And it's fairly inexpensive, right? And it's like $7-10 a transaction,
Hmm.
right? I mean, putting on the blockchain, is it going to get the cost down any lower? I don't think so.
Right.
Even if you do proof of stake based blockchains, I mean, you can get marginally lower than $7, but what's the point,
Yeah. Exactly.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. You see, let's say you got it from $7 to $5. Okay, so $2 is yeah. So you know what Merge is going to do? They'll just lower their fee,
Yeah.
right? Because out of that $7, look, let's face it, Merge almost went bankrupt in 2008, right?
Wow.
Because of litigation. They got sued. They were challenged over and over and over again, and all the money that they had made up to 2008 was spent in defending those lawsuits, and they defended them, right? And uh, now that they've established that this model of a central or a third party holding the registration as opposed to the county is they've defended it in every jurisdiction in the country and it's held. So the money that was paid to MERS was paid for that legal victory,
Wow.
right? So they invested, the real investment of MERS was not in the database. I mean, yes, that was important. Of course, they made the database, but the real investment that the MERS team did was in the legal investment and establishing the precedents and creating a legal framework so all of this is possible.
Wow.
Okay, so for now MERS makes $7, $10 a transaction or whatever, and most of that is profit. But I think they've earned it. They
Yeah.
took that risk. It almost went bankrupt because and they took all the bullets and politicians who I shall not name attacking them, saying it's their fault for the mortgage meltdown, and it
Wow.
really wasn't. All they're just providing a service, and they won all that, and they made it through all that. So look, I have no stock in MERS. I'm not promoting of them or anything like that. I just think that I think it's one of those great American inventions,
Yeah.
great American success story that we should be celebrating.
Wow, that is fantastic. Well,
Yeah.
Pavan, again, thank you so much for
Okay.
being on the show. I truly enjoyed our conversation here
All right.
today. And congratulations on the incredible success and the incredible technology that you are building. It's absolutely phenomenal to watch from the outside, and a true pleasure to speak with you today.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. Cheers.
Oh, I forgot to ask if there's people
Uh-huh.
out there that want to get more information about SunWest or the technology or get a hold of you, what's the best way to reach out?
You could just use the technology yourself. Just go to usemorgan.com
Perfect.
and you just go there, you hit engage, and you just start talking to it. If you want to talk to me, just go into usemorgan.com and just say, hey, I want to talk to Pavan. And it'll
Made
direct
it
them to
easy.
me. Made it really easy. And if you want to know more about SunWest, just go to swmc.com.
Awesome.
As in,
And we'll have
as in,
all that information in the show notes.
okay. All right.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Thanks again.
Thanks,
And
Chris.
thanks everybody for listening. Hey, it's Chris. Thank you so much for listening. And I hope that you enjoyed our guest today on the podcast. This is a reminder that we have just finished taking the greatest lessons from all of our guests and packaging them together into a brief online video presentation that's going to teach you the 10 most profitable ways to grow your mortgage business. And then we show you how to automate those processes in your business with people and systems so that you get the results without you having to do the work every day. This is quite literally a blueprint so that you walk into your mortgage business every day with pre-booked appointments with borrowers that want to meet with you and referral partners that want to send you business so that you are spending your time inside your mortgage business on the highest dollar per hour activities, and you truly become the executive of your business, a true business owner, rather than just somebody who's going to a job every day and making a wage on the way through. This is an absolutely incredibly powerful training for you, and I cannot wait for you to experience it. So head on over to chriswebinar.com. That's chriswebinar.com to get that free training today. Now, if you could do me another favor, if you enjoyed this episode, please head on over to iTunes, search the Loan Officer Wealth Podcast, and give us a 5-star rating and review, really on any podcast platform that you're watching this on. That just 30 seconds of your time goes to help another loan officer in the industry discover this information and really help put their life and their business on track for more success. We are all in this together, and there is more than enough for all of us in the industry. So I would love if you left us that 5-star rating and review. Don't forget to stay tuned for our next episode, and I'll see you then.